Let's talk about building skills, especially for plumbers and electricians in the country. We've been talking about this for a while. We talk about the lack of actual skilled and certified labor in the country. Now, there's some people who've done something about this. They are called Propeller. And the project lead at Propeller is Lillian Mwai, who's also the country director at SwissContact. She joins us now in the studio. Good morning, Lillian.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Great to be here.
Enjoy the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Yes, I was checking whether the seat is red, but it's black, just like yours. So.
Yes, it's black, it's just hot. Okay? Have fun. Now, have you read Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe?
I'm trying to remember from my high school days. I think I did read it, but it was not examinable. I read it for pleasure.
It was for pleasure? Yeah. Okay. So you know Okonkwo.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, there's also a musician in Kenya that calls himself Okonkwo. You know him?
Sorry?
Major.
Oh,
yeah. So Siti was
inspired.
Born 3 months before this book was published.
True.
Nice.
And because he's celebrating his birthday this year,
Okay.
he has decided that this week we are going to be looking at that book, and he's picking out snippets from the book.
That last bit about celebrating my birthday, Eric has extrapolated.
And taken it to its logical conclusion.
Yes, that book is full of proverbs, and they are literary enthusiasts and people who enjoy the processes of literature have analyzed some of those proverbs over a period of time. And what I'm looking at is the outcome of some of those analyses and what it is and the relevance of those proverbs. That book has, I think, 9 different proverbs, but I've only picked on 5.
Okay.
Today's proverb: the sun will shine on those who stand before it shines on those who kneel under them.
Wow. Okay.
The sun will shine on those who stand
Before it shines
on those who kneel under them.
Yes, now, you thought you had escaped because it was not examinable.
That's what I'm wondering. What's happening?
It's now examinable.
Exam time.
Exam time. What do you think this proverb means?
How many marks?
For simply agreeing to answer the question, 3 marks.
So, let me just say, that sounds like a very African way of making things very deep. If that was his intention, it sounds very deep.
It worked.
It worked. So, okay. Could you go again? The second...
Most definitely.
Yes.
The sun will shine on those who stand before it shines on those who kneel under them.
Okay. This is a trial.
Okay.
And should not be used to determine my levels of intelligence or lack thereof.
It will not.
Or your future.
Or my future.
Yes.
I would say that I think this meant to say, from my perspective, in 2023, not when it was written.
1958.
Exactly. I would think it means that the sun shines to those who maybe rose earlier before the sun stood. Yeah.
4 more marks. 4 more marks have been added.
Goodness.
You only have 3 to go before you get 10.
I think the ones who come to stand later may be too late because it's too hot, like they're not acclimatized. So they're likely to kneel. Was it to kneel or to bow? Something.
Kneel.
To kneel. But I could be wrong.
This particular proverb and the examination thereof was out of 10. You've gotten 12 because you have brought a distinct interpretation about the rising of the sun and the apex moment when the sun is really at its very hottest. Yes. So, well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's deep.
That's deep.
We try.
Lillian, well done. Well done.
Thank
Tell us about SwissContact.
Great. So SwissContact is a Swiss not-for-profit organization that was formed in Switzerland over 60 years ago by CEOs who were previously CEOs. They'd retired, so they were CEOs in the private sector in Switzerland. And they thought to themselves, now we have all this time. What can we do to be able to better the world? And so they said, there's a lot of development issues in the emerging and developing countries. Why don't we use our expertise to help provide solutions for these issues? And so they came together and they started meeting and they started unpacking the issues and organizing themselves. And so it continued, and we are here 60 years later. And so how we work is basically we look at the issues that are facing the private sector and look at them as a partner, and then try to bridge a gap between them and government and the community. And so we're able to provide a solution that is full circle, as opposed to only focusing on one component.
So what do you do? Okay, so you have the money, you have the issues.
Yes.
You have the community.
Yes.
All right. Give us an example.
So let me give you an example. So what we do is probably we come to a country like Kenya, and then we want to run a project. And so before we design any project, we want to understand what is the situation of Kenya. What are the needs in this country? Just to mention, the private sector in any developing country provides about 90% of jobs, 80 to 90% of jobs.
Yeah.
So it means that they're the most economic driving force in the situation. And so we come and find out what challenges are this economic driving group facing, and it's in which sector. So what we, for example, here in Kenya, in 2020, we did that feasibility study. And then when we analyzed, we realized that the construction sector was one that was earmarked for growth. And when we dug a bit further, we asked the private sector companies that are in the construction sector, which are your pain points? And they said, we're experiencing a huge skills mismatch between what we're getting from the vocational education sector and what we are expecting as the market. And so what does that mean for us? When we are constructing, we're actually facing challenges in electrical and plumbing trades. We are not able to find skilled plumbers and skilled electricians. And so we asked the question, so what does that lead to? What do you experience because of this skills gap? So they have to retrain these people who have actually been certified and have gotten some vocational education. So they retrain them. And in the process, as they're retraining them, as the work is going on, so there's a lot of wastage of material, definitely. There's a lot of delays, because even the ones who are unskilled, they're also few. So they have a shortage and they're also not skilled. So they have delays in delivery. There's, of course, what I've mentioned, the wastage of materials. And also sometimes they turn down jobs because they do not have the manpower. Sure. So they're also losing out in terms of revenue, in terms of income. And so we sought to see how to resolve that situation based on our experience and based on the Swissness of the organization.
So, in order to solve something, obviously, then you have to look at the cause of it. So, very basically, why is there this gap amongst this set of skills? Why? Why is there that gap?
So, what happens is, unfortunately, when we're developing solutions, and that's what normally happens, we sometimes tend to leave some people out of the room. So maybe the person who will design the curriculum, probably for electrical and plumbing in the vocational education space, will do it from their expertise and their experience. But sometimes there's a big gap. And that's what they said. Government is not coming, or the curriculum developers are not coming to ask us, the private sector, what our needs are. So there's a gap there. So the person who is receiving the end product and the person who's creating the solution are not seated in a room or a situation room like this one to kind of analyze what topics are needed, what topics are not needed, what do we require, what is missing, and then now design a solution that is meant to address the challenge that the person who's going to get these workers to work with.
For example, let's talk about plumbing. What is it that the industry needed from a plumber that the vocational training institutes were not equipping their students with?
I would say also the practical element of it, because it's very theoretically based. So I'll come, I have an understanding of different components, but when you ask me to cut the pipes, to join them, when you talk about probably some of these pipes, HDPE pipes, that are supposed to be conjoined, and when you ask someone to actually do that joining of those tubes, they're not able to do it. They've never done it. And then another challenge is whatever equipment and tools they're using to train with at the schools is totally different from what they're receiving in the market.
So they're still doing the steel pipes.
Yes.
And the industry has moved now to the
HDPE pipes.
Those ones.
Which are made of plastic. So there's a big mismatch over there. So means that I'll have to, once you've come and joined, it's like I'm starting to train you from scratch. Whereas you actually did spend money and time to get trained.
So even before we go towards, strategies for sorting this issue out, then it's a bit worrying then, because look at the rate at which, buildings are going up around. Let's look at Kenya.
Yes.
The rate at which buildings are going up around the country, quite a number of them are residential, which of course then begs the need for plumbing and proper mason work.
Yes.
So are we saying that the majority of the folks who are working on these projects then are not skilled to the levels that they ought to be? Are we looking at a problem?
No. I wouldn't want to
be alarmist. Okay.
Yes. What I would say is that they're just a very few number compared to what the market needs. And those people who are there have had to go through a lot of retraining and upskilling while on the job.
Right.
And we can shorten that cycle.
Okay.
And be able to create an individual who just comes in and plug and play. They know what they're supposed to be doing, and so then the buildings are moving faster, and they're able to add value, and then we're able to see some lack of delays, quote unquote, because I'm sure you've also, in addition maybe to the ones that are falling, which I don't think the result is because of plumbing. I think that could be totally something different. But I would say what I have experienced and what I've seen is that you see a project starting and it stalls for such a long time. And sometimes it's possible that the issue is on plumbing and electrical works. It's possible because there is a shortage of that supply of good ones. So maybe this construction is up and ready, and now they're waiting for these other very few skilled people to be available
to
so
move
that
from the other project to come.
Yeah.
When you did your deep dive into determining the needs, the demand versus the supply, did you come up with something that approximately can be looked at to determine, in terms of figures, what the real gap is?
Yes. I'd say, yes, thank you for that question. I would say what the feasibility study showed was that for every 20 plumbers or electricians that are required, there only exist 4 who are skilled enough to be able to do the job. So if you need 20 of them, if you need 20...
So it's 25%.
Yeah.
4 to 5, so...
20%.
Yes.
Who can do the job?
20.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have a need. You're looking for 20 people. You're only able to find 4 people who are skilled to the level that you're looking for.
That's alarmist.
It's a big gap.
It's a big gap, for sure.
But then there are very many people who are out there and they have trained, because we have vocational training institutes in the country, across the country, that are still churning out people who are training in plumbing and electrical. So the thing is, it's a mismatch in the level of skill.
It's the level of skill, not the number of people that are required. You need someone who's skilled. You need 20 skilled people. You're only able to find 4 who are skilled to the level that you require.
Okay. But that skilling is determined by the market.
Yes.
Because all these others, they've been certified.
Yes.
These people have come out, they have sat an exam, they've actually passed an exam, they have come out with a certificate. And as far as they're concerned, as far as the government is concerned, they're skilled.
Yes.
But the market is saying that they're not.
Yes.
That only a fifth of the people walking around with these certificates are actually skilled.
Yes.
Now, if this same deep dive that you undertook, what did it tell you about the training institutions from whence these plumbers and electricians and masons came from, and what it is that you found as a gap in their curriculum, or even in their ability, if the curriculum exists, to ensure that that is actually taught to meet the market demands.
I would say what we found is that the lack of the practicality. So it's very theoretically based. So I would say, for example, if you're doing a grade test 1 for plumbing or electrical, you do 3 months of a theoretical classroom training, and then you receive 3 months of an attachment.
Yep.
And that's when you say, okay, you're certified to this first level, and maybe there are 3 certifications, so you do that until the very end. The other thing is that, so it's very theoretically based. So you have very little opportunity to actually practice what you learned. And in that time when you're going to the attachment, remember, you learned using steel, maybe pipes, and then here you're coming to be introduced to something totally different. Maybe you were trained using pliers to cut the pipe, and now there's a machine that's what's being used in the company. So before it's time for you to really inculcate yourself into it. Now you already finished your 3 months, then you go
back to
and
school.
as you know, attachees don't do the very difficult work. They do the simple.
But then that's the gap.
Yeah.
Therein lies the gap.
Yes.
If this sort of training, at the heart of it, there's a practicum, which is what we're referring to as an attachment. How many such attachments do we have that are also relevant to the market? Because you may attach someone and you're going to come across steel pipes where you're attached. And then you come to the market, because it's not as though steel pipes aren't being used.
Yes,
there are people who use steel pipes. So do we have enough places where someone can be attached so that they're actually very current with the changing modes that are relevant to their specific discipline?
I think they exist. I think the challenge is the disconnect. So if I could be coming to you for an attachment, right? I come with this logbook where it's supposed to do certain things and what the curriculum is expecting me to do. And maybe I'll just be keen to give you what the curriculum, which again does not talk so much about this modern technology, is expecting me to do. So I would say, let me speak to the solution that we provided. For example, with our solution, with this solution that it's a flagship project, by the way. So this flagship project, we borrowed heavily from Switzerland, who have run what we call the dual approach to learning or vocational education for the last 100 years. And what happens in theirs is that it's very skills oriented. So in a week, you go 1 day to the school, the TVET center, and 4 days you go to a company where you're based, where you do your on-the-job training.
Good.
So there's more emphasis on the on-the-job training.
Do we have that here?
In this program, yes, we do. So
do we have those companies in the country? Do we have enough areas where this practicum can actually be realized?
So I would say for this particular project, we had set a target for this flagship, the first cohort. We were targeting 20 companies that would be willing to partner with us to try this approach. And we found 20 companies that took on about 85 apprentices. And so these apprentices, we did not copy-paste the Swiss model. We took it, we listened to the private sector players here in Kenya, we looked at the Swiss curriculum, we looked at the Kenya curriculum, we listened to them in terms of what is missing, what do we need to add, a lot of practicality, a lot of just a few things here and there to make it more practical as opposed to theoretical. Then we sat also with the National Industrial Training Authority, NITA, who are actually in charge of apprenticeship here in Kenya. They were involved in the process as well. So we got all the important stakeholders to sit down, to look at it, and then for us to create an updated version of the curriculum that then would be applied under this Propeller program to be able to test this method, particularly for the Kenyan market.
So who lends the ideas of expertise to the program? Because one of the things that you said in the beginning is that there's a disconnect between the career practitioners and those who hold the skill, or in this case, lack of it. So now with this flagship project, obviously it's to fill a gap, it's to right a wrong. So then who gives fuel to the program, to the learning that is happening while they're in the courses?
So that's a good question. So SwissContact is usually basically we take a facilitator role. So we facilitate all this conversation. So we got the Swiss experts who has been involved in the dual approach to learning, working with the local Kenyan plumbers and electrical experts as well as when we are reviewing it. They're able to learn that knowledge. They're able to guide because they have done it before and they're coming from a system where that works for them, and they guide them to how do you make it work for them. So we bring all these people together, then facilitate that conversation. So we have the Swiss experts being part of it and the local experts. So there's that transfer of knowledge. So then we test it out. If we find there's a challenge, I'd say the project is pretty agile. We try and resolve as we go. So we're not like waiting for the full cycle. Then we say, these are our learnings. And so we sat back and we watched things as they went wrong. But we are very agile in identifying the challenges as we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Break time.
Break time, huh? Okay. I'll hold that thought.
Hold it, please.
This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day.
SwissContact and project lead at Propeller. It was a 2-minute break, and CT, you've held that long now.
I have. I have. You mentioned a figure, 85, as the number of individuals who went through this apprenticeship process. Okay? Okay. On a yearly basis, did the deep dive, I'm back to the deep dive, determine just how many such trained artisans we would actually need in order to meet the market demands?
That's a good question. Just to clarify, we kicked off the project in November last year, so the 85 are ongoing. They're receiving training now, and they're part of the first cohort. In terms of what we're the number that we're trying to build the gap for, we did not set out with a particular number to say, okay, we need 10,000, and so we're going to work with 10,000. What we sought to do in this first phase is just be able to have a test basis to say there's actually an opportunity for this to be the problem solver. And so because we are a small organization in the grand scheme of things in terms of Kenya and only working with 2 privately owned TVET centers in Kenya, there's only so much you're able to do. But we're able to use the results that we find from this first phase, which is a 3-year phase, to be able to advise the government in terms of policy and how they can be able to roll it out in terms of the cost model. Like this particular first phase is for us to be able to get the financial model correct, to get the actual components of the curriculum correct, to get the right mix for the company and the school, to get feedback from...
So it's a pilot.
It's a pilot. So basically in this pilot, we are targeting to train 1,000 plumbers and electricians by the end of the 3-year phase. So we'll actually have more data to share. But then from that point, then we can be able to learn and gather and be able to advise the next phase. But I don't think change happens in a very short time, because as I mentioned, in Switzerland, the reason why it has worked really well is they've done it for 100 years. They have done their mistakes. They have learned and relearned. But the most important thing is that their private sector in Switzerland have been the ones who have driven this dual apprenticeship agenda forward. So they're the ones who have come together, have been able to inform the curriculum revisions, determine whether they're right or wrong. They're the ones who work with government together to be able to facilitate that discussion. And I would say because of that, their unemployment rates are at 1.8%. And I would say that there's something, it's not only about how many plumbers we get out there, but in terms of the whole process as well. So we might get really focused on the numbers, but forget there's a process. There's a shift in mindset and everything.
Actually, what you're doing is correct. It actually can't get better. But let me explain to you where I'm coming from.
Okay.
You kick off this process, you have a goal in mind. In terms of numbers, 1,000. In terms of expertise, there's a curriculum, and you're trying to determine how it works, because as they are taught, they also go into these practicums, so you see. Now, the data that comes out, are you waiting for 3 years to lapse before you can use the data? You see where I'm going? Okay, so please continue.
Yes, so I had mentioned previously that we are very agile. So once we start seeing, let me give an example so that I just don't say figurative things, and yet it's ongoing, so I could actually speak to some of the learnings. So, for example, when we when we developed the curriculum, there was more focus on the curriculum and on the trainer, them being able to be well equipped to move forward. There was some focus on the mentors. Mentors are the supervisors on the job, in the job companies. There was some focus, but it wasn't that huge. So when we kicked off is when at that point we were like, hang on, the mentor is a very key component in this program. The apprentice is based there 75% of his time. The mentor has not been trained on the dual approach to learning. See, in Switzerland, it's much easier because everybody, the full cycle, the mentor who's mentoring the apprentice has gone through the dual approach of learning. So he knows what his role is because he understands. He has gone through it himself. But remember, this supervisor, yes, he is a technical expert, but he has not had to kind of be someone who's following some form of a curriculum or be able to support learning. And so there immediately we said, we might have missed out this component. So now we are working together with our experts to be able to deliver something that will equip them to also upskill as mentors, not as technicians per se, but as mentors.
Do you have
and
a curriculum
trainers.
for the mentors?
That's what we're developing as well. So it's the same curriculum, but it was just not very focused on training them. But now we have to do a more of a training of mentors.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the Swiss have had this for 100 years, which means even as they train the mentors, there will be a model for supervising the mentors and ensuring that they have a curriculum that guarantees that they are always working towards meeting the ever-changing demands of the industry.
Yes.
Is this part of what you're working to build?
Yes. So I would say this, maybe let me just clarify the point. It's not that the curriculum is totally different for the mentor. No. It's the same. So even in Switzerland, it might sound or it might appear that they should be going through a specific training. But remember, he was an apprentice. Now he's higher. He understands this component. So there's not much, maybe there's just very low touch.
Actually, there is. Being a student and being a teacher are
It's
two
totally
very different
different.
things. You may both know the subject matter,
Yes.
but there are skills that you must ensure that this mentor has in order
Yes.
to superintend whatever it is the apprentice is doing,
Yeah.
and to be able to ensure that whatever is being learned is actually entrenched.
True.
Yes.
But I would say the difference is the difference between maybe a trainer or the teacher in class and the mentor in class and the mentor in the company are slightly different because the trainer is more focused on the theoretical components, the apprentice to understand the theory. Why are we wiring like this? Why does it have to follow this line as opposed to the other line? But the mentor already has this technical expertise. So it's the delivery. It's more around the softer skills of delivering this learning to this person. And then when you combine what this mentor is teaching in the company and what the trainer is teaching in the school, they complement each other pretty well. So for that's what I have heard and learned from those experts in Switzerland. It's that it's the same thing, but it's just how you approach it. It's a bit different.
So who's this mentor? And I asked that because I remember about 2 years ago in this room, we read a story about the engineering, do I want to call them association?
Board.
Thank you. And they were concerned because there was a specific skill certification that was missing from a lot of the graduates that came into the career world. And they said, hold on a minute, we can't really have them practicing as engineers if they don't have this certification. Now, many would have wished that previously there was some kind of symbiotic relation between those who are on the board, because these are practicing engineers, and the education system to guarantee that this lot of people that you're putting into the working world have everything they need to practice on the ground. So that's why I ask, who's this mentor? The mentor essentially is passing on knowledge to these folks who are being trained in this cohort. I would assume, and maybe wrongly, that a mentor is somebody who is practicing in the field and has an understanding of what needs to happen practically on the ground. And then for me, that would show that relationship that we're looking for is actually being practiced before they graduate.
Yes. So the mentor, yes, you're right. It's the supervisor. It's your mechanical engineer graduate or a certified plumber, electrician who has worked for for long. So either he has gained it through maybe some form of apprenticeship, or he has gained it because he had a Bachelor of Science in electrical engineering and has worked there as well. So yes, it's whatever you're actually describing is it. He is a professional.
That the experienced person
in
the company.
In the company.
Who this intern reports to.
Yes.
Okay, and they deal with the intern on a daily basis.
They deal with the intern.
But Han is saying that there is no shortage of skilled electricians and plumbers in the construction sector. And he's saying, I'm speaking from the ground. What we have is people coming out of the vocational training institutes, skilled, but they lack the experience.
Could you repeat that again? Maybe I've missed. What's the question?
I'm going to read it verbatim. There is a difference between being skilled and being experienced.
Yes.
Plumbers and electricians coming from our TVET institutions are skilled, but may lack the experience to take on big projects.
Yes.
So they come into the field and they are mentored by the experienced ones.
Yes.
There is no acute shortage of skilled electricians and plumbers in our construction field. Do you agree?
That's a good... I think it depends on the position. I mean, it's how you look at it. I would say this. You could graduate, and even anybody could graduate, myself as well. I graduated, and I thought I had a very good degree, and so when you give me any work, I should be able to do it. Because then that means I am properly skilled. I am a graduate with a certificate. It might not be in plumbing or electrical works, but I'm a graduate with a certificate. But when I come, what was I doing? So, for example, for me, there was no attachment that was required. So when I got out of university and I had done actuarial science, you would expect that if you start giving me these complex actuarial computations, that I should be able to give you an advice that would be able to move us forward. But I wasn't in that capacity. And I underwent some 2 or 3 years before I got to the level where I am confident to being able to give an advice. It's the similar thing. We are certified, but we are not skilled because there's those practical components that are missing. I would also want to say the dual approach to learning is not only focused on hands-on skills like plumbing and electrician work. In Switzerland, even people who go into banking do the dual approach to learning. Even people who different unexpected trades. We decided to focus on this too as a test basis. I would also want to say that there's an interlinkage which we hope to achieve as we continue, where someone who comes out with this certification in the dual apprenticeship can then decide to continue with a diploma and get to that degree. But then he will be more efficient compared to another student who just went straight and did a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering. But this one who did 2 years of a dual apprenticeship has those great skills. After 2 years joins, continues to do a diploma and degree, and then he comes out more skilled, is able to add value faster to the organization compared to someone who just leaves and then has to kind of undergo some retraining.
So here the argument is that they are educated but they're not skilled.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now in this work that you've done, you've said you're working with NITA, the National Industrial Training Authority. There's also the TVETA.
Yes.
The TVET Authority. Those institutions have people who are experienced in these matters that we're talking about. TVETA licenses and reviews and inspects the vocational trainings all the way to TVETs. And they have also engaged and interacted with very many other people in the country and outside, from Switzerland and Germany and elsewhere. And they've looked at, okay, so how do we look at matching what we are producing versus what the industry needs. I've seen very many stories here where TVETA and Federation of Kenya Employers and Kenya Association of Manufacturers are meeting and talking. So did you talk to them?
Yes, we did.
And are you saying that after all those conversations that TVETA has had with the industry and the market, they have not seen how to adjust their curriculum in any way to start addressing the needs of the market, such that now Propeller has to come and start doing its own thing parallel?
Great, that's a good question, Eric. Actually, that is the challenge of international development, is that everybody is always doing something within the space. What I can say is this. There are different approaches to dual approach to learning. Germany does it, Austria does it, Switzerland does it as well. There are different organizations and players out there that have worked with different government different vocational education institutions. We did speak to TVETA. We are also hosted the principal secretary, Dr. Esther Moria, to come and see our program in January. So she's well aware. And we're working with them as well. The thing is, everybody has done their program and they've implemented it totally different. How we choose to implement a SwissContact is via doing this feasibility study, working with private sector. Because you could come and say, I want to introduce a dual approach to learning and do it from a policy space. That is one approach. And so you develop policy that would allow it to happen without having to test on the ground. Our approach is a bit bottom up. Sounds very political, but no. Ours is more bottom up. So we are coming, identifying what are the needs of the private sector. That's our start base. Where is the gap? So there's a gap that exists from our feasibility study where these two components are not speaking to each other. So we get them to speak to each other, develop a curriculum based on these discussions that these key stakeholders have had. Then we test it. Then when we're coming to a point where eventually we are doing advocacy and policy work, we have a backing to say this works because we have localized it. It's from the Kenyan people, by the Kenyan people, and this has been designed for this country. There are different approaches out there and people are doing it differently, but ours is grounded on this private sector approach.
What are you giving at the end of the training?
We're giving a certification. So because we're working with NITA, so we did not want to get into the pitfall where we come run this program on the sidelines, and then now we want to come and tell the government, could you adopt it? We wanted to work with the National Industrial Training Authority on the premise that they are the ones who hold the apprenticeship model. This is an apprenticeship approach. So they verified it, and then we agreed that they would they would set the final level of certification, which is the highest grade for NITA, which is grade 1 and equivalent to KNQA level 8. Yeah.
So they get that grade 1 certificate, which is recognized by the National Qualifications Authority, which means that they can then use that to upgrade if they want to.
Yes.
And it's recognized, they can go with it wherever they want to go with it.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the people who are spending 75% of time training your trainees are actually the industry.
Yes.
How feasible is it, or are you seeing, for industry to take up the role of training? Because this is what basically it means. It means that the private sector is also becoming the training institute.
Yes.
Is that really feasible? Are you going to see many more people agreeing to bring in some crew from somewhere who is going to spend 1 day in a classroom and then 4 days in my industry, spending the time of my skilled electrician?
So what I would say, just to correct, the Swiss model is the 1 day with the 4 days, but ours is 1 week you go to the school, and then 3 weeks you go to the company, and then it keeps rotating. It's a 2-year program. I would say they were already spending that time training people, because there are different models where they absorb plumbers and electricians. There's the one model where they wait for graduates to come from the vocational education system, and then they bring them in and they say they still had to train them for at least to retrain them for 2 years so that they can start adding value to the organization. One. Then there's 2, they are casual laborers who they've also taken in from their sites, where they come with zero skill, zero understanding of what is a pipe or any backing, any theoretical backing, and they start training them. So they're also kind of going through some apprenticeship. So they were doing it anyway.
Okay.
This is a different model because now it's more structured and it's not haphazard or based on the job that you're doing. It's more structured, and so ideally should give you more value, because this person comes with some backing and knowledge. They know they're undergoing an education. So ideally their attitude should be different, their mindset should be different. They are ready to absorb and then should give you more value faster because they know they're in a training situation.
What I'm raising, Lillian, is for it to be scaled, it means that you need more and more industries to actually accept this.
Exactly.
And dedicate time, first of all, to train the mentors, for them to understand the curriculum, so that when these kurutus come, I'm calling them kurutus specifically, when they come, then this mentor knows how much time they're dedicating to this particular person to pass on the skill.
Yes.
What's the incentive for the private sector to do this?
I would say It's true. It's a mind shift. It's a total mind shift because yes, training has now come to the company and you have to accept it, right? The incentive for the companies, they're getting skilled workers who are able to then deliver faster and allow them to move faster. There's less wastage of material because they have come with an understanding. They have practiced a bit in the school because in the school they will not be doing too much practical, but they're doing some time in the workshop. Before they come and cut, before they start drilling, they have been taught on safety and health and safety trainings. They have a good backing as well. So they'll get a skilled worker. They'll get someone who's able to deliver value for them faster. They're able to, something else I needed to mention is this. We did take this private sector, just a core group, the first ones who are willing to go to Switzerland to see how this model works. Because I can tell you all about how great this model is, but I have to come and match you to enable you to actually see what are other people doing. So we took them for an exposure visit to businesses that were the same size. So the businesses who actually do this dual apprenticeship approach in Switzerland are not big, renowned, famous companies. They're just mid-level companies that have 15 to 20 workers. So we matched them to the same 15 to 20 workers in Switzerland. When they went and saw, one of the feedback we received is that in a job, let's say they usually have 20 people, let's say in Kenya doing, they found that that organization only had 5 people to do that job. So what does that mean for these companies in the longer term? Is that instead of hiring 20 people, you can hire 5 skilled people.
Problem there.
Longer term.
We have many people who need employment.
No.
But we're going to
you as private sector, you are looking at your bottom.
No. But this. It's Let me say this. Let me say this city. Not everybody, and I want to mention this. Not everybody who does a dual approach to learning gets 100% absorbed into that employment. They already have a skill. When you're skilled, you can stay there and grow. You can decide to go and pursue a certification and become more skilled. You can start your own business as well.
My real concern actually is not even what I was saying. That was just really by the way. Okay? It's an economic battle that has always been there. Mechanization, industrialization. When people are skilled, they come with an added cost. Not just the training, the remuneration for what they now know. The countries you speak of, whether it is Austria, whether it is Germany, whether it is Switzerland, these skilled individuals are paid a premium. That is why the incentive is not something you need to preach very widely. People understand that when you're skilled, in fact, this country speak of Switzerland, such individuals are highly favored more than these theoretical individuals like myself who went through university and learned a lot of theory.
Yes,
okay?
That's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
Now, let's come back to Kenya, shall we?
Yes, please.
Yes. When we skill these people, can this skill be exported elsewhere?
Yes.
Meaning I can take that certification from NITA and go to Uganda and tell them I've come from NITA. Okay? I can do this job, and because my remuneration ought to be this, is it something that is exportable?
I would say that's a very good question. Let me say this. This program we're starting, or this flagship, our intention and our hope is that it will be wildly successful and that the government would want to run it in different trades and in different sectors. And in doing so, we would become the skill hub, the hub of skills in East Africa. Then what does that mean is that people will now get jobs, because everyone would say when you're looking for skilled workers, they are found in Kenya. And yes, it can be exported, but I would want to say that the certification, the importance of us having a place or an institution certified within the government of Kenya or within the education system is so that it's recognizable within this country. Should you choose, like any other profession, to go and do it abroad or find an opportunity, there are numerous opportunities. That is possible. But for us, we're trying to create a more skilled workforce and possibly be able, in the longer term, to create great, drive and ambition and a positive thought process in this East Africa region, that this is where skill comes from. And we can also be able to export it. I would want to say in Switzerland, the skills development or this program, the way it's designed and everything, to them it is also a form of revenue for them. Being able to teach or being able to do different things with this particular model is a revenue earner for them. There are many opportunities that lie within this model itself. Yeah.
Danger. When you have very many people who come here with certificates saying that they are skilled and trained plumbers, plumbing becomes expensive.
Yes, it does.
But what I would say
then you have better guarantees.
Yes.
Better guarantees.
Because at the end of the day, you will spend a lot of money with the unskilled one because you will waste materials, there'll be mistakes, you'll still spend money. But if you get that one good
it'll get to that point where, like where we talk about in those countries where plumbing is actually a job that you come and pay so much.
Yes.
We want to operate with the ask for plumber thing on the poster.
Yeah, because that's what it is.
Which one? The one is pasted on a tree.
Ask for plumber on a tree, call that number, guy comes,
Ask for
guy
electrician.
clogs the toilet.
But you're not
until
assured.
next week.
That guy comes to your house and plugs something and there's water hitting the roof.
And it says Nimimaliza.
I think this would be a good solution to that problem.
Wacha niite Chalo ndio anajuanga ili akuje tufanye sasa tukiwa wawili madam tutakusaidia.
You put your hands together and see how to solve the problem.
Lillian, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you as well for having me here.
And good work that you're doing. Lillian Mwai is the country director at SwissContact. They are running the program that she's been telling us about, which is called Propeller, which is propelling.
Moving forward.
Moving forward. A boost to a brighter future.
There you go. A boost to a brighter future. Keep it here for more conversations